Not replaced yet, office hours. This is the show where we run down your top news daily in AI. We chat back and forth, banter about all the things that are going on. And also, if any of you are here watching, we take your questions. Think of us as your personal AI consultants. My name is Nick Pushkar. I'm here with my brother Jesse. Say hello, Jesse.
Hello, Jesse.
There we go. And today is Friday, so happy Friday, man. How's it going? Anything interesting in the AI sphere going on in your world right now?
No, I mean, you and I are close to each other and not where we normally are. So
That's
not a lot of AI stuff, although I think some of the one-offs that we've captured and grabbed would be fun. It's funny, I got a text just now. We'll say, what's up, Julia, friend of the pod. She wants to talk about AI in her world. So sorry, I was looking down when this was starting because I was like, hey, you want to join our live today? And it's not going to work.
That's probably quick.
We're going to do it next week. So
Next week.
Anyway, yeah, a lot of cool stuff going on.
Okay, cool. Well then, if that's the case, why don't we jump into the news today? So today is Friday, May 9th, and in Arizona, a groundbreaking use of AI occurred in the courtroom. The family of Christopher Pelkey, a road rage victim, created an AI-generated video of him addressing his killer during sentencing. This marks the first known instance of an AI-generated victim impact statement in a U.S. court. The emotional video contributed to the judge imposing a maximum sentence of 10.5 years. Legal experts are now debating the ethical implications of such AI use in legal proceedings.
Yeah, so interesting. Meanwhile, researchers at Mass General Brigham have developed an AI tool called FaceAge. I don't know if I want to use this myself. This tool analyzes facial features to estimate a patient's biological age, providing insights into their health status. In a study involving cancer patients, those with a higher biological age than their chronological age have poorer survival outcomes. FaceAge could become a valuable asset in tailoring treatment plans. And if you're someone interested in the topic of biological age, consider looking into the work by David Sinclair and Tally Health.
Turning to cybersecurity, the firm CrowdStrike announced it will cut 5% of its workforce, approximately 500 jobs. The company cites increased efficiencies from AI as a primary reason for the layoffs. This decision comes despite a 25% year-over-year revenue increase. Critics argue that attributing layoffs to AI advancements may be a strategy to appease investors. And it comes not long after a CrowdStrike outage left hundreds of clients without endpoint protection, raising questions about the trade-offs of automation.
In Central Florida, the job market is evolving beyond its traditional tourism base. The region is experiencing growth in AI and simulation industries, diversifying employment opportunities. Orlando, in particular, has become a national hub for simulation training used by the military, healthcare, and aviation sectors, now increasingly enhanced by AI. This shift is attracting tech companies, boosting average wages, and fostering a more resilient, future-ready economy.
And a new report indicates that AI budgets across industries have doubled. The surge is driven by the rapid adoption of generative AI technologies as companies invest heavily to integrate AI into their operations.
In the construction sector, AI is making significant inroads. Companies are leveraging AI for project planning, risk assessment, and resource management, leading to increased efficiency and cost savings. Tools like autonomous drones and 3D modeling systems powered by AI are being used to monitor job sites, detect hazards in real time, and forecast material needs with greater accuracy. Industry leaders say these advancements are helping projects stay on schedule and within budget, even amid ongoing labor shortages.
Lastly, in manufacturing, AI's limitations are becoming apparent. While AI excels in data analysis, it struggles with complex tasks in materials manufacturing, such as semiconductor production. Human oversight and expertise continue to be essential in these areas. And that wraps up today's AI news highlights. And usually this is the point where I, Jesse, key you up for a few of the top stories that we talked about. Now, today, I think we're going to do things slightly different. You told me you had a few more things that you wanted to talk about. Tell me if I'm wrong there about maybe what we discussed yesterday. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we went a lot longer than we intended. Was it just under an hour yesterday, given the normally short lives? I think that, you know, the cross section, you made this point.
Well, actually, sorry, before you set it up, so
Okay.
if people don't know,
Oh, yeah,
set up what
intro,
you're
yeah.
talking about, yeah.
Excuse me.
So what we talked about yesterday was that Meta came out with new AI ad creative tools, and it said that it can create the ad creative for people who need marketing services. So normally if you have a business, you go out and you either create something yourself or you hire an agency, and that agency will create ads for you and then place them in the Meta ecosphere or any other ad platform across the web. Well, Meta is now saying, hey, use us. We will create the videos for you for your ads. And that's a big talking point right now. And Jesse, we work, you run the ad agency that we both work at, and you have been a marketer for quite some time. And so you have a lot of thoughts and opinions about that.
Yeah, I think when, the soundbite that Sam Altman said a year ago was that in 2 years, 95% of marketing jobs will be automated. I believe I'm getting that soundbite right. And the pivot that I think we should make is timescale is a question, because we don't want to take self-driving car timescales and every 2 years say it's 2 years away, right? We're trying to be more accurate than that. And then it's a matter of jobs or tasks and roles. And so I don't know. I think that there are so many unknowns that to have a confidence of how the outcome is going to go is really premature. The timescale of job disruption, because that's what you were wanting to steer me towards yesterday, and rightfully so. I mean, that's the topic of the show. I don't believe any serious professionals who do this at a high level for a living are at risk in the creative space by that platform specifically in, I would say, certainly the next 2 years, but maybe the next 5. I don't
Wait, can I ask a clarifying question real quick? The creatives in that space, are you talking about, designers and videographers and video editors and so on and so forth, all of the creatives that are in that space? There's no job disruption coming from automated creation of ads for any of those people.
The caveats I layered here: sophisticated advertisers. So I could endeavor to define that on the fly. What I mean by that, though, is
yeah, let's say an agency,
you have a marketing budget,
$50 million a year in revenue, that the people there would be considered sophisticated advertisers, sophisticated marketers by the industry.
Yeah.
Whether they're good or not is irrelevant. They're making that money and they would be in the class of that people. You're saying that there's no job disruption in the next maybe 5 years for any creative in the space due to the automated creation of ads.
You know what caveat is really important to key in on here? It's because Meta made this tool. This tool coming from Meta is not an appealing tool to an advertiser at that scale, because and neither is it appealing to the brand, because as I said yesterday, the strategy and the work is channel independent and before that in the layer.
So
I see no company saying, I will allow Meta to dictate my ad creative without...
Not 5% as a test? Not 10%, 15%?
At that scale, the companies I've worked with, it's zero that I would expect. Are there
There's
some
0% that 0% they'll allow?
I'm saying of the companies I have worked with,
yeah.
and I go back through the memory lane. No, my experience is that none of them would be game to do this.
Okay. And then let me zoom out. These are tools agnostic from whoever makes them. This is a automated ad creation. It's a type of a tool that can be created.
Yes.
So it's we were talking offline earlier, and maybe an unfair, but maybe a fair criticism I gave you, or just comment that I gave you, was that sometimes it seems like you enter the conversation without the time scale in mind.
Yeah.
So in this space, it's zoom out from Meta. Don't think of this as a Meta tool, because there's nothing that keeps it in the world of Meta. Who cares about Meta? This is a conversation about generative AI and can it create ads that perform for companies? That's a very agnostic way of looking at it.
Fair, yeah.
And in the next 5 years, will it eat into any jobs?
When I divorce the question from the headline we were reporting on and from the kind of moment in time that
Yeah.
our friend and colleague asked us about. Can I envision a tool or set of tools that, like, I guess maybe the way I would think of it is, what are the criteria of the tool that, like, what would it look like to disrupt a non-trivial portion of jobs, which could just be a single digit percentage? Then yeah, that tool is totally feasible to be built, right? Like you absolutely can. Well, let's just say the quiet part out loud of, like, all of the copywriters' jobs have been disrupted. So if you
So
were
that's
employed,
and that's like one of those discrete chunks that I
yes,
was talking about yesterday, right?
yes,
The copywriting nature of it has been disrupted. It's not that 100% of copywriters have been fired,
right.
but
And
it's been disrupted.
it's not even to say that well, no, I won't go down that route. I was going to say, it's not to say that a copywriter is a zombie job, but as a singular task that you're responsible for a singular thing, which is writing words, that is drastically diminished. And your point yesterday of, like, threatened is an important. Threatened does not mean eliminated. It just
Right.
means put into a higher state of risk due to new factors. And so threatened, yes, all copywriter jobs have been threatened.
And I actually, let me ask you this. What is what step in the ad creation nature, and allow my ignorance, because you're the marketer here. So I mean the whole process, like soup to nuts of, like how it all happens, how the whole series of things happens for an agency to create ads for any given client.
Yeah.
There's a set amount of things that happen for that to occur, and the ad gets placed and it's running, and then it performs or it doesn't.
Yeah.
What part of that is the most resilient against AI right now?
I mean, I don't want to not answer you, but it's whoever's taking the responsibility for it is the most resilient piece. Like, I was trying to think in a counter to yours, like, for this instance, right? For Not Replaced Yet, we're doing the creative, we're doing the writing, we're doing the formatting and the strategy. We're responsible for all of it. There's no one else who's responsible for it. At a certain scale, we will have an attorney that is involved in this. And even though we have AI tools to use to create contracts, we will not feel comfortable relying on those AI tools. We will employ some level of expertise from someone else. It likely will cost money, right? And that's because our responsibility and our confidence ends at that official legal layer, and it probably ends in other places on other subjects. And so the responsibility graph that's over top of the marketing hierarchy of a department structure with a creative director and an ACD and a copywriter and a graphic designer and a videographer, those jobs converge because the tools make things easier. Right? It doesn't take 160 hours to do 4 full-time jobs.
Right.
Or to get the output of what 4 full-time jobs used to output.
Right.
It might take 20, and then what's left is more stuff.
So, but this is where I want to, you're leading me perfectly into my question. So what then are the things that are the most vulnerable to AI overtaking?
The most vulnerable?
Yeah.
Well, it's the lowest level of the hierarchy chain, because, you know, it's the least on the line if you're the junior person, and then it requires.
Well, I guess
task-wise, that would be the junior copywriter, the junior graphic designer, the junior videographer, who is contributing, who is executing tasks,
right,
but not really having agency over the work. They've been told what to do. Right? So the AI can be told what to do better, faster, cheaper.
Right.
And that's
so then map that across all the agencies doing all the work that they're doing right now.
Sure.
And how many jobs does that potentially disrupt in the next 5 years? I'm not asking you for a specific number because you don't have those numbers off the top of your head.
Yeah.
But would you agree that if you start to look at it sort of in these bite-sized ways, that's the type of disruption we're talking about? So you started a little bit ago by saying no disruption over the next 5 years.
Yeah.
But even are there juniors in the sophisticated marketing companies?
Yeah.
Are there juniors?
I also. Sure, of course.
And are those jobs, for some reason other than what you've said, special in a way that are different from this disruption that we just discussed.
Just remember that I was answering a question about the Meta ad tool.
Okay, well, I'm
Right?
trying to,
and so now we're zooming out. So I'm just saying, don't hold my answers down.
Yes, that's
to
fair.
that,
That's
right?
totally fair.
And
Yeah,
so in this hypothetical tool, that certainly can exist, and some flavor of it will exist.
yeah.
But it has to be like, there's no guarantee that it's gotten right in any like first, second, third iteration. Like right enough to cause employment change, right? So, but in in this thought experiment of what's possible, yeah, I mean, sure, you could imagine 10 and 20% of jobs easily being disrupted. And then I'll return to a point I think I made on yesterday's, that that doesn't mean that the agency's margins reduce, or that doesn't mean that the agency makes less money. It means that they might repurpose the revenue into more valuable things because the busy work is handled, right? So disruption, I just want to say
that's just one option, though.
I don't mean, what I want to say, maybe it's just for myself, is that disruption is inevitable, and displacement is not necessarily inevitable. Like that's what we're advocating for, is that.
But didn't you just say that the juniors could be displaced?
There's a
You
junior
just said
videographer.
10 to 20%.
There's a junior videographer that will just say, hey, I need to make sure I got my f-stop right on the camera, and that's my job, and that person's job will be disrupted. And there's a junior videographer who will embrace these technologies and become a modern videographer, not a legacy videographer who used physical cameras, right? Like whatever the wave change of that phase is, or that career role, whatever Zoom level you're at. And so, yes, it will disrupt. I think it's important for us to be careful to not, like, when I say 20% of advertising jobs be disrupted, and I'm the president of an advertising agency with a team of people who are doing work, it's not that 20% of those jobs necessarily go away. Some might at some agencies, but others will change into other things. So yes, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm generalizing away from the specific question. But it is that, like, as I try to apply what automatic ad creation means, it just is furthering the wave that we're talking about here, in that, like, jobs are changing, your role is changing, provide value, learn the tools, keep up with it. Like, that's the only so what you can derive from this, you know?
That I am in complete agreement.
Yeah.
That is, for anyone in any position, it's what I endeavored to do. When I got Cursor early on, and I rarely used Copilot before Cursor came out, and I was not in VS Code using Copilot really, and that was like kind of the first big early AI tool, as far as I know, to assist developers. And so, but then Cursor came out, and I just saw a step change in what was possible. And really, it was like copy and pasting code into ChatGPT and then back over to VS Code.
Yeah.
But then Cursor came out, and of course now there's all the alternatives to Cursor, but like now that space exists, and it's every single person who has any that sees disruption in their industry right now by AI needs to be up to date and learning all the tools that are disrupting their current industry, so that they can be on the forefront of that space, so that they can know, like, one hypothetical is the most extreme, where it completely devastates a job, one sector, and all people in that sector no longer have jobs. So if you are up to date on that, you know that before everyone else knows that, so that you can try and adapt as best as possible. Or it's that some amount of jobs go away, and the jobs that go away are to use your language in another way, the less sophisticated, meaning those who are not up to date on the AI tools. So you need to be protecting yourself too. In that space, we're in complete agreement. I will say, from my point of view, and I said it earlier to you, there's something about you that I feel that's selling horses here in right before Model T. There's just something that's hitting me, as there's like a big giant bat with the label of bias on it that's hitting me over the head when I hear you talk about this in a certain way, that is just like, no, not my stuff.
Yeah.
And that, when I hear other people say, like, I see you seeing that in other people in other industries, And when I hear you, it's like I hear those people in those industries, you talking about ad creation here. There's just something there. And maybe it's because I'm out of the space, and maybe it's again like my ignorance of the sort of the expert level of this.
Yeah.
And or maybe I don't have a bias in a way or something, and I can see it more clearly. I don't know. I don't know which one's right.
I mean, my take is that you have a lack of perspective on the human factors that play into that, and so you're oversimplifying the dots connecting the incentives and the measurability and the ability for these tools to prove value.
Well,
Again,
actually, yesterday, remember, I said that actually made me convince more of my point, that the fact that agencies can't offer objective like evidence in certain ways that you're talking about, of like our actions led to XYZ sales, is like gives me a pause to think that, well, why don't we're gonna, if we can't prove it through the agencies, we can't prove it through the AI. So we're not missing out on anything if we move to the AI in that space. And again, I'm all talking about percentages here. What percentage of what amount will they allow? You know, there will be an AI forward person at some company, at Coca-Cola, at Nike.
Oh, they're there now.
At some
they're
company
trying to figure it out.
They're trying to figure it out, and they're gonna play around, and they're gonna fail. Some people will completely fail. Some people will succeed though. Some people will use AI, highly leverage AI tools, and be like, this is our new stack. This is our new advertising stack, and we're going to implement AI in these 4 new ways that we hadn't in the past 5 years. And that's going to change the way that works, and that may disrupt or may not disrupt some jobs. And that's, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. One thing I need to do is make sure I'm clear on the language, because I take an optimistic stance and angle to, like, when I say no jobs are disrupting, that is incorrect. The jobs are disrupted, right?
All right.
The jobs, the tasks, the roles, the companies, the disruption is real, just like it was with the internet. Do I say, therefore, unemployment goes up, which is not what you're saying either, I know.
No.
But I am saying disruption, I am minimizing the articulation of disruption, because I don't believe the outcome is inevitably negative. You know, like, there will be negative instances, there will be negative outcomes for individuals, but at a macro scale, I am not convinced that it leads to less employment. I am not convinced it leads to.
Are you, when you say macro, do you mean just in the like ad AI or the advertising agency world, that macro level? Not like full employment, right? We're not talking about.
Yeah, I mean specifically in the advertising world in this space.
Okay.
I think
in the advertising world. So
yeah.
Actually, let me ask a specific question then.
Yeah.
Advertising over the next 10 years will be net increase in employment, stay the same, or down?
My gut reaction is increase.
Okay.
My gut reaction is increase.
Okay.
Because I think that it becomes, competition is increasing. Like we talked about yesterday, part of the problem with trusting the algorithm, a centralized algorithm to optimize your ads for you, is the incentives for differentiation for brands. And it's, you know, everyone's looking for an incentive. So the algorithm might give you an incentive when all the humans are designing things, but when the algorithm's designing everything, the human might give you an incentive. I think there is, equilibrium is the wrong word, but you know, I mean, listen, go back before generative AI, go back to Deep Blue and chess and Garry Kasparov. I mean, the idea that the centaur is the best chess player, a combination of a human and an automated system, seems to have played out. Centaurs win chess competitions over AI by themselves and over humans by themselves.
I actually don't think that's true anymore, but I could be wrong.
I mean, instances left, right, and center. But the point is, I believe that to be the model for a very human endeavor like advertising, which requires, you know, a lot of perspectives, or can benefit from a lot of perspectives, right? There's no one perfect advertisement. Advertising is subjective. The results are rarely directly attributable, which has pros and cons to this argument. I would ask a question back to you in your field, because I think it's an interesting parallel. You have experienced nothing but individualized upside from integrating these tools into your world. Are you ultimately pessimistic on your own value creation, like you've you know,
Greatly.
with non
Greatly.
yeah. Well, I was
Yes.
going to say with nonfiction and
Yes.
before nonfiction, you've traded time for value. You provided a service for clients
Yeah.
in development.
Yes, I am worried about it and I am pessimistic about it. I think that code especially is one of the leading places, like it's one of the industries where they're working on it the hardest.
Yeah.
They're trying to solve it because then they are also, all these companies are incentivized. How much money does Meta make if they can fire 90% of their devs? How much money do they make? Their mass amount of money that they spend on their devs is just wild.
Yeah.
And so, and put that across all the tech firms. And so if you can employ 10% of the devs and get the same amount or more output, because those 10% are the highest performant devs and they're using the AI, they're the orchestrators of the AI tools.
Yeah.
And all these companies, the heads of these companies are saying right now, whether it comes true or not, are saying we think in some amount of time, in the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, the AI will write most of the code. So there's that. And so, and then for me personally, yes, my position has been greatly improved because of this, and that's just one single local instance, and that's where I'm trying to guard. I try to guard against my own bias. It's not, my experience is basically irrelevant.
Right.
And you can look at I mean, we looked at it together on the job loss episode we did. The amount of software engineers that are being hired is way down since the past year. We have way fewer software engineers being hired, and you have the tools getting better and better and better constantly. And so I think dev is ripe for crazy disruption in the very near future.
Yeah. Like
And it's actually not in the near future. It's literally happening.
No, I mean it's happening.
We are in the midst of it. People have been fired and they have not been replaced by other humans. That is a true statement. And you have more tech firms coming out saying that they're firing people. CrowdStrike, we just did a story about it on this episode about one of the major tech firms. CrowdStrike was that company. Remember that day that like all the systems went down across the globe? That was CrowdStrike.
Centralized vulnerability.
And CrowdStrike is firing 5% of their workforce because of AI. And so like, it's not future, it's now.
Yeah. It's funny, these lives kind of lean, and maybe it's because of the improv nature of the format, the lives tend to turn more towards debate.
I know.
Than like kind of like framing. So just good notes for us to think about like where we want to steer it. I think
for sure. And this topic's been very specific. Like this is something that was brought up by a friend of ours, and so we talked a lot about it yesterday. So, and we're now
here's a question to maybe end on.
Yeah.
When we were talking offline before this, I kind of saw the shape of this up down hill where, and to bring it up to the analogy we were just using, the comparison we were just using, you have experienced an upside in personal productivity and value creation for your clientele that you're servicing, right? It's
absolutely
gone from, you've been this productive and you've now gone up in productivity, right?
Yes.
So then I know that you're an N of one and we're kind of talking macro and micro, but focus on yourself, because I don't think it's an irrelevant instance. You don't represent all the developers or all the scenarios or anything, but for your own forecasting, and again, we don't have to answer this, but like, what is the scenario? What would happen to tell you that downturn of value creation, not code writing, because I don't think there's anyone that would argue that like the code writes the code from here forward more and more, right?
Yeah.
The code writes the code. You don't write the code writes the code.
Yeah.
But that does not necessarily mean the value you create for your clientele turns a corner and starts diminishing because of that. So if something in the real world had happened, more regulation, technological setback, I don't know what, again, barring dystopia.
You mean like what would just disrupt me more so? What am I worried about for me personally?
No, what would tell you that, like you already said you're worried about that disruption, right?
What would make me more optimistic?
What would bring you to say the decoupling of AI systems getting better and better and better at writing code departs from the idea that therefore you will provide less and less value in that service. Like,
I'm not, sorry, I'm not saying that I will provide less value. What I'm saying is that overall as an industry, there will be fewer jobs for developers. And so there are developers who will have jobs.
Development jobs.
There'll be fewer development jobs.
Not fewer jobs for developers necessarily. That's
no. Oh,
maybe my
well,
point.
that's my position, is that there will be fewer jobs for developers. Like right now, there will be. What do you mean? What am I missing?
Jobs for developers. Developers can do many jobs.
You're saying I could be a barista and I could still call myself a developer?
You can be in a technical space providing value, similar value. Like the value you provide when you build a website is not the code you write. The value you provide when you build a website for someone is a bit you created and infused with best practices based on your experience, a business tool for a client, right? The code is a means, and you are now getting a weapon to turbocharge that means of code. But the value was the business tool. And so you can continue to provide the business tool and can be better at providing the business tool because you can write the code becomes less of a time suck.
I'm talking about overall jobs. At any given moment across the entire world, there are N number of software developer jobs. And then that number will go up, stay the same, or go down over time. And my position is that because AI is becoming better and better at writing code, you will need fewer people to be in positions to actually orchestrate that AI to write that code for any given tool, for any given company. So that, and what I'm saying is, I'm saying that, and I have the literal evidence of, I pulled up an article here, 10%, let's see, 35% fewer job listings for software developers compared to 2020. You have in different organizations, in banking and finance, it's down 7, in sales it's 8, in marketing it's 19, and in software development it's down 34%. I mean, this could be a local moment where the jobs are down and something could change and they could rise back up. So we could, peaks and valleys, whatever, that's possible. But what I'm saying is I'm looking at the breadth of the evidence, and my position is that AI is getting better. There will be fewer overall jobs for developers. And it's true currently.
Yeah.
I'm not making it up. I'm saying it's true currently, and it seems to be the trend. And it could get better. And what I would ask you is, you would have the burden of proof to saying, where does the trend change? What offers that change in the current trend?
Yeah.
Not me to offer the burden of proof of why would the current trend continue.
That's fine. You dodged my question.
Oh, I apologize. What's the question?
Like, yes, in the big picture, all of your variables are accurately represented. I'm saying you're not ultimately paid to write code. You're paid because a business needs a website for their business.
Totally.
And you, being paid less and less to write code, need to find a way to continue to provide as much or more value to replace that value that is diminishing from the development.
Right.
Right. So I think it's interesting in your instance and freelancer interest, because you're like a microcosm of the stack. A developer in a big company is literally paid to write code because someone else is responsible for the product management and things like that.
Yeah.
So what they're seeing is a flattening of the responsibility stack and squeezing out unnecessary things, while the product managers can still be responsible or the supervisors can still be responsible. And it's a reshaping of this, right?
Okay.
I don't know that the reshaping of this 2 years from now needs fewer technically capable people. Maybe there are more technically capable people needed. They're just not writing code. Maybe not. I don't want to say that that's like the thought experiment I'm making like my observation or my like prediction on. I'm just saying that yes, developer jobs where we pay people to write code will diminish, and I don't see that increasing. I see that probably not going to zero, but like
not zero. I don't think it's zero
like
yet.
Considerably diminished. But I mean, you as a microcosm, the value you create has to shift. Otherwise, you'll have to be a barista. Not hating on the baristas.
No,
but
baristas are great.
I believe not everyone's the best developer, but good developers are good problem solvers. We don't have less problems. We have infinity problems. Is that David Deutsch?
Yeah,
Right? Problems are inevitable and problems are solvable.
Right.
But like we have a class of worker that is incredibly detail oriented, analytical, and problem solving engaged, who have now freed up from the tedium of making sure the semicolon was in this place and the single quote was not the double quote,
Yeah.
right? While that's jarring, and I don't want to diminish everyone who's been laid off's opinions, like you're going to find new ways to provide value.
Right.
You're going to do that. So like how much is disrupted? A whole hell of a lot. Does that put a hurting on the advertising industry as a whole, or does that mean the advertisers should be scared?
That's a microcosm. I mean, yes, developers are one subset of the advertising industry, right?
Right. I'm trying to segue back to the initial thing, but that's my like kind of like articulation of it.
And again, I'm a weird I'm like a weird example because I've been such a generalist as a long-term freelancer, and so I am very comfortable wearing many hats.
Generalism is the new skill.
Generalism is a great skill to have in this era. It always has been, but it's a great skill to have. And I've been a product person. I've been an advertiser. I've been a developer. I've been all these things. I mean, but I've been those things while a developer. I've been a developer who puts on a hat as a technically competent generalist person.
Let's end with this little anecdote.
That's a good way to.
And then we should come back and do a full episode on this or a live on this or something, because I think it's a microcosm. And I've told a bunch of people, if you've worked with me, I mean, you've probably heard this story, but if you've worked with me, you've heard this story. In 1999 and 2000, in high school, I worked at a local TV station, Savannah, Georgia. I worked at WTOC first and then WJCL, and I worked in studio, and then I was a photojournalist. I was a shooter, as we call them, right? I was the guy that we sent a 3-person team out to any story. Okay, the mayor has a press release, or someone got, the 7-Eleven got robbed or something, right? 3 of us generally would go for the bigger stories locally. Savannah was market 100, so we were dead mid-market. 3 of us would go to that mayor's press release. There was me, the shooter. There was the on-air talent, right? The talent in front of the camera. And there was usually a producer. Sometimes the producer would stay back, but they were involved, right? And so these teams of 3 people in the late 90s, early 2000s, before internet advertising really like put a hurting on journalism, would go out. And there was one guy, though, at WJCL that we called a one-man band. The one-man band would go to this show. They'd write their own stuff. They'd set their tripod up. They'd hit record. They'd go into the front of the camera, and then they would be the talent, and then they would be done, right? 1/3 the cost of the team deployed that I was on, and so therefore very business-wise, like optimized, lucrative, right? And the thinking at the time was, that's great, but those are unicorns who you can't find. You're not going to find a bunch of people to do this, right? It seems hilarious at the time. It seems hilarious now, but at the time, that was literally the talk in the area. I go to college.
Selling horses.
I go to college, 4 years, come back. I didn't have any job because like I got a journalism degree with the intention of living in Savannah. So like, where else was I going to go? But anyway, I went and like talked to them, and they were going to give me a 50-cent raise for my same job, except I had to be a one-man band, because in that 4 years, it was so optimized, like obviously going to go that route, and it did. And so by 2005, internet advertising was up, local journalism was down. And so you could look at that and say, man, that really put a hurting on local journalists. And it did. It put a lot of people, good people out of jobs, hard workers out of jobs. It really did in the next decade diminish that. Yet here we are in 2025, there are more people getting paid to create content. There is more journalism happening. There is more like it shifted into a way that we couldn't have predicted at the time, but it did like happen. So I'm not saying that's guaranteed at all. That's not like one little pattern there is how all of these play out at all. But from my perspective, I see someone like a very capable, smart, technical person in a development job, that job evaporates. That person has a lot of value to bring. and can make money doing new things that we're going to figure out. And I hope and think independently, I believe, maybe with a lot of bias clouding that independence, but I hope and think that that's what will emerge from this. And then what you have is the ones who refuse, the ones who say, no, I'm a local journalist, I need a producer, that's how this works, I'll go find a place that does that. Well, those places that do that will diminish until you're a barista or you're unemployed. I think the rest of them just come along and they figure it out. I don't know. Maybe that's like lazy cop out at the end, but.
All right. Well, if you've been watching at this point, I think that's a great time to wrap it up. We appreciate you watching this very long, complex, nerdy conversation. Obviously, I mean, both of us are very opinionated about it, and we have a lot to say. If you're watching at this point, thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, share, follow, all the things. I probably said 2 things.
And tell us what we both got wrong.
Yeah, and tell us what we got wrong, because if you have opinions about this, we are just 2 randos. That's whatever. We are giving our honest opinion. We have a lot of experience, but of course, other people have experience in different ways as well and have valid things to say here. So anyways, Jesse, thank you for a good discussion, and we will see you all next week.
See you next week.